I'm Rob Sarney, and you're listening to What the Heck Fintech, where you'll experience and learn that Fintech is Fin Life. Let's get started. Welcome back to part 2 with Steve Dorval. If you didn't hear part 1, please go back and listen to his great and interesting background and how he leveraged all his learning experiences to create his superpower so he could be a great institutional advisor, coach, and founder. So what's that secret? I understand the purpose now, and it sounds like you have a broad, target market, advisors and individuals. You might want to take it. I don't know if you want to even clarify that even a little bit more.
Yeah, I can.
Or maybe not just be enough. But
right.
What do you think?
Yeah, so the way we're thinking about it, we do see an application for individual investors. It's not our primary focus. Maybe that becomes sort of another channel at some point. We're focused right now on the registered investment advisor market. So those independent advisors, and there's a lot of consolidation happening in that space. But, people who are, and especially within that community, people who are already or continuing to manage money, right? So if you think about it, the simplest way to look at the financial advisor and wealth market is there are financial advisors who are wealth managers. They still do a lot of their own either individual stock and bond picking or pick ETFs and manage portfolios. And then there's asset gatherers who specialize in sort of the EQ and building great client relationships and helping to shepherd them through making good decisions. And then they outsource the money management to third-party asset management platforms, to mutual fund managers, to managed account providers. And so what we're doing is we're starting by saying there are, we estimate up to 4,000 people in that asset manager space who already acknowledge that they use options as part of some of their regulatory disclosure. Some percentage of them are struggling basically from a workflow perspective, that there are no tools purpose-built to help them, right? They are trying to reuse retail platforms or tools that aren't really built for derivatives and options. And so let's help them be able to implement their strategies more effectively and more broadly. So some of the advisors we've spoken to, for example, they only do it for 3 or 4 of their clients because their clients are really asking for it. But if they had a tool like this, they could do it for 50 of their clients. Some of them have said they estimate we could save them probably 50 to 80% of the time it takes right now to be able to research and analyze, execute the trades and the monitoring of those. So we want to serve them first. That's our beachhead. And then we'll likely move into the world of how do we help those asset gatherers to be able to use this again. And maybe that leads us to either partnering with a registered investment advisor. It could lead us to becoming a registered investment advisor and doing it for them rather than enabling them to do it for themselves, right? So I guess probably one way to put it, and right now we're building QuickBooks for people who want to file their own taxes, but we could also help you as your CPA and become the accountant as well over time. And we want to just enable more people to have access to better portfolios.
In those registered advisors, is there a certain, like they have to have so much, assets under administration or assets under management? Is there a focus there too? Like not too big and not too small? Is there a sweet spot there you're looking for? Or you said options, absolutely, right? That's great. But is there a size? Does size matter for you or you don't for your beachhead?
Yeah, I think it's more attitudinal than it is size. But what we found is that sort of if you go into what's our ideal client profile right now, it's either an individual advisor with probably $250 to $500 million worth of assets. If they're within a firm, that firm might in aggregate have, 10 advisors and a couple of $1 billion worth of AUM. But more importantly, they're interested right now in being able to build these customized solutions and bring that value to their client, right? And it's honestly a sort of a win-win for everybody because with that, think about back to that concentrated portfolio of staple stock. The advisors who work with that executive generally will sort of set that aside and it gets held away. And they don't end up charging any fees on that. So it's a missed opportunity for the advisor to generate more revenue from their client base. So if we can help them to unlock if let's say that client has $1 million in staple stock, and we can help them generate another $8,000 a year, and it now allows them to be able to charge either a full or discount price on those assets, then the client's better off, the advisor's better off, and we've generated a lot of value for both of them.
Yeah, yeah, and plus with your certification CFA, I bet you're talking to a lot of CFAs, and they, you know how to use their language and what they care about and what they're worried about and what they're excited about, right? All that.
Yeah, and that's why we're really starting with there's a whole, we can try to convert and educate a lot of people who aren't aware of this, but let's start with the people who already know, understand, care, and have a problem that we can help to solve for them.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm gonna pivot a little bit here now too. So you give a lot of advice. Mass Bankers Association, you collaborate with. You give a lot of advice there. You're giving advice to startups because of Mass Challenge and many other spots too. Throughout your career, what do anyone thinking about innovation, and especially startups, doing? What's your what do you see? What's the blind spots on people with innovation, especially with AI is a whole nother game, right? But but it all goes hand in glove. Innovation's innovation, but AI is a different game a little bit, right? Or a lot of it. What's your go-to, and what do you look for when giving before, almost like a Stephen Covey, seek to understand before you can be understood? What do you try to seek first so you can help them help themselves?
Right. Yeah, so I guess maybe it's sort of dovetailing off the what I was saying earlier about so let's solve a problem for people who have a problem. I often try to help the the founders understand, have you found a problem that your potential customer base has, and that it's an important problem for them, and do you really understand that problem? And I don't know if you've ever been through a design thinking workshop, but the first rule of design thinking is fall in love with the problem. And so that's why, sometimes I've sat down with, new grads or people early in their career, and they're focused on, I want to be a founder. I want to start a company, right? And what I tell them is, find a problem that you're so interested in that you want to work on that for the next 10 years. And you want to learn everything about it. And you want to be able to really become an expert about that problem. And then that gives you the ability to then build the right solution to that problem, and that will resonate better with your potential customer base. That's why I think a lot of the best companies are born out of somebody who said, God, this is so annoying. I wish this existed. And then they go build it. And, some people just complain about it and others go and do it. The problem becomes when people, so back to the work I do with Mass Bankers Association, people sort of see, oh, artificial intelligence is a big deal, and banks seem to not be innovating very much. So why don't we build agentic AI tools for banks? Which is great, then banks do need that, but they need to go 4 levels deeper to say, all right, where is agentic AI most helpful? Where are the challenges? What are the legitimate challenges? The difference between doing digital account opening versus a loan origination system versus a customer service chatbot. Those are all, agentic AI opportunities, but they're different problems. There's different people in the company who worry about those things. And so getting down to that depth of knowledge and really, for any founder, I always say the most important thing you can do at the beginning is focus. I don't know who ever said it, but I constantly repeat it, which is most startups die of indigestion, not of starvation. They try to do too much too fast because they're so excited about the opportunity. And instead it's I solve this particular problem for this particular person, and I do it better than anybody else. And once you've nailed that, you've got the right to be able to do other things. And it's sort of and the same thing with innovation from the other side. Like sometimes companies take too broad a perspective and look for, a broad solution when they have a specific problem. And why not solve a specific problem with a specific tool and go from there? So I think the more you can get sort of that lowest common denominator, the easier it is for everybody.
That is awesome. I love that framing. I mean, it goes back to some of the things that I hear all the time is for you know not just it gets you excited, but why do you want to go after that problem? You have a story that you banged your head or something catastrophic happened in your life to you or a close family member or whatever it is, and that's what's giving you that energy to
Hmm.
solve it and go hard, right? And then that also understanding that why to yourself. Now you get down to that unmet human need, which is broader than a problem. Problems are the seed of that unmet human need, because that's
Right.
what you're really solving. Because you're so mad, or you're so frustrated, or you're so like this is wrong, whatever it
Hmm.
is. That's your unmet human need that you're really going after. And the problem was the spark that
Right.
got you into like, I got to solve this. And then you have a customer for life when you solve unmet human needs. It's,
I love, yes,
you know,
100% agree. Yeah, because the problem is ultimately a worry or a concern or an anxiety for that person on the other side of the table. They're worried. They're sort of worried about the talk time in their call center. What they're really worried about is, am I going to keep my job? Am I going to be able to continue to support my family? Am I going to be able to send my kids to college? And so, if you can help them to do all of those things, to do a better job at their job, then it solves those other things that really are the motivators for most of us.
right, right. And for different people, it's different reasons, right? Different whys, different things that get you energy, that
Hmm.
get you pissed off, whatever it is, right?
Right.
So that's why that beachhead focus is so, like you
Right.
already went through so elegantly. Wow.
Yeah. Well, and also, like you said, it sustains you through the inevitable downturns and the trough of despair that founders talk about, right? None of this stuff unless you're. I suspect maybe there was some negativity or trough of despair if you're Mark Zuckerberg, but most things aren't lightning bolts that go up and straight up and to the right forever. So you're going to have to be willing to stay with it when things seem bleakest.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. So let's see here. So,
But
I'm gonna ask you a totally different question now, because hey, the when someone says to you, hey, because they don't understand fintech and a lot of stuff you just said, or even the terms, all the
right.
terms in finance, all the terms in the tech side, you're at a cocktail party and you say the word fintech, they're like, what the heck, fintech? Little,
Hey, that's a good
great little
name.
call out to the podcast. How do you answer that? How do you answer that to someone that friend, family, whatever it is? Like, what the heck, fintech? Like, what are you doing?
Right.
How do you explain that concisely? I'd love to hear that.
Great question. Yeah. I mean, I think one of the most interesting things about being in the financial services industry, I'm sure the same thing is true for people in the healthcare and health tech industry, is financial services and health and those things influence and affect everybody. So they influence and affect everybody a little bit differently, but whether or not you're, somebody, one could argue even somebody who's unbanked who uses a payday lender is still in the financial services ecosystem up to, somebody running a family office. And so it's about, helping them to see or sort of connect with them wherever they are on that journey and say, it's really about how can we bring more technology or different technological solutions to the table to make it either easier or better experience for you within your financial within that world of financial services, which again you can't escape, right? You can choose never to own an electronic vehicle. You can choose to probably, it'd be hard nowadays to not ever have a computer, but you really can't avoid the fact that you need to make money, pay your bills, hopefully put some money away. You can't avoid the financial services ecosystem and the fact that, and so being able to say or point to examples of, fintech 40 years ago was ATMs, right? And so, imagine how scary it was, for people to say, we're going to put this thing on the outside of the building and we're going to dispense cash to you, right? But now, how many of us never walk into a branch because we can do that? And now fintech is, opening your bank account or taking a picture of your check or being able to do a claim online with your, or having somebody track your driving habits and getting a discount because you're a good driver. So I think people are familiar with it once you put it in that right context and leave aside the crypto, blockchain, quantum computing, like those things that we in the industry care about, and recognize that this is really all about creating better experiences and better access to the services that people need.
Yeah. Side story with the ATM. So maybe think I tell this all the time because that was big fintech for me, right? But in the 80s, right? So I'm in the 80s, right? And I'm in college and I'm going down to visit my buddies that have a house down the Cape over the summer, right? So, and we're all going to go out. There's like, 9 of us in this house and then like, 5 more piling in like me, right? So, and then I get there and I'm like, oh, I don't have enough money to go out. And they're like, oh, you can go to an ATM. I go, I can go to an ATM down here. Yeah, and I grew up in the North Shore. My bank was in Marblehead. I'm like I can get money from that bank here. They go, yeah. I thought I always had to go to my own bank's ATM. I didn't know that. So I remember seeing money coming out. I'm like, this is amazing. I remember that. So then my whole night changed.
I know. That's awesome.
Wow.
And nowadays you can go. How many weeks could you go without ever taking cash out of your wallet?
I don't want cash, right?
Exactly. So it's amazing how things evolve, and all of that is enabled by technology.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm a basketball referee, and there's some leagues that pay in cash, and I just give the cash. Maybe I keep $20 in case for some weird reason I need it. That's it. But the rest of it, I give it to my wife. Like, here you go. Do what you want to do with it, or get it in the bank. And then she does, because she does all the fintech that you're talking about for the house, right? She's the one who gets it in there. I just show up.
That's right. So that's always the best thing that most of us can do is.
Right. Wow. So, so with what because independent of a lot of stuff we said, well, for startups, right?
Yes.
Where do you see them a lot of times going wrong and a lot of times going right? Like, so, and that probably depends on the individual and where they grew up and what they're doing and all sorts of, but what's kind of generic? What are you seeing? Like, what like founders have to, like, boom, you have to do X independent of the problem that you just said.
Right. Yeah. So I think, sort of they're interrelated is I'd say, sometimes, oftentimes, especially founders who haven't been in sort of on the other side of whoever they're trying to sell to, don't recognize that having a great product or a great solution is just the ante, it's the table stakes. There are a lot of other factors around that you need in order to be able to, to facilitate actually closing a relationship. Now, that's why, I'm obviously talking about more B2B or B2B2C, direct to consumer. If you have a great product and people love it, you can get a lot of, and great marketing, you probably can move forward. But if you're a founder who's solving a problem, again, for a bank or an insurance company, right? So there's 2 things I'd say is one, shooting too high too fast. Like if you're, the best thing you can do is say, what's sort of the smallest company that I could sell to that has the problem I'm solving? Because smaller companies will usually be a little bit more nimble. Maybe they'll continue to be run by a founder or somebody who knew a founder, and they have a soft spot in their heart for founders and unique solutions to problems. And they're more willing to sort of take maybe a bet on an unproven solution. And so sometimes people spend too much time sort of chasing, Moby Dick here, right? and it's like, oh, I'm going to sell to, name your favorite big bank or insurance company or wealth manager. It'd be great to have Fidelity as a client, but are you really ready to sell to Fidelity? Because the second thing I'd say is they underestimate the fact that there are all of these other things that are around the product that they need to think about. So it doesn't matter within a regulated industry like financial services, you really can't wait to start thinking about security and privacy, for example, right? Anybody you talk to is going to expect you, to at least have an opinion, if not a certification, right? So, within the industry, there are different levels of certification that you can get that, require more and less resources, so the sort of gold standard, at least in financial services, I would say to founders, is a SOC 2 Type 2 security certification. But no pre-seed company should go do that. We've done this for Jade. we've built a 1 or 2 pager that explains what our security strategy is.
Mm-hmm.
So here's how we're building as if right now, what things we're putting in place at the moment, when we plan to go and work on our SOC 2 Type 1, and so that it gives what the customer wants to be able to know is, where are you in your journey? This is one example. Where are you in your journey? Do you understand what it is that you need to do? And then that allows them to evaluate, am I comfortable with where you are on that spectrum? And there's other pieces around that, around, things like, some companies won't engage with a startup that doesn't have any clients. Others are willing to be the first client. Some don't really worry about integration to sort of systems of, core systems in the industry, like a core banking system or maybe a claims processing system. Others it's if you aren't integrated to their core banking, they really don't have anything they can do with you. So there's just, it goes back to, in my mind, that focus around really understanding the problem and all of the ancillary things around it.
Wow. What about regulation? What do you see about that? Because I mean, that's a broad term, but it depends on how you're implementing your fintech solution, how much regulatory is needed, how much regulatory risk is involved. Do you farm that out to a bank so they handle their piece and you handle yours?
Right.
How do you wrestle with that? Because regulatory, that's a big deal, right? And that could make you crank, or that could make any product be able to be bought.
Right. Yeah. So that's a great point. And it's so I think, again, regulatory wise, it's from 2 points of view. So on the one hand, as a founder, I guess I would recommend and advise, and we're actually living this, which is, think about building the product with as little regulatory overhead as you need at any given point in time. Now, if you're building a solution that is just inevitably investment advice, or you can't do the business without having personally identifiable information, like you need to just be realistic around where you are. But I'll pick on Jade for a second. We are deferring becoming a registered investment advisor so that we can start as being technology and see if we can't solve that solution, because there's a lower regulatory overhead. We believe that there's a problem out there to be solved, and we've built it in such a way that advisors could generate value from it right now without ever having to put in a client name, client hold. Like, we can do it with no PII. And so that reduces, again, the burden to them of oversight. We again have the plan on how we'll do all of those things, but we didn't need to do that right away. There are, again, when you're building Betterment or Wealthfront and you're going to be a registered investment advisor and that's your value prop, you need to confront that. So it's about, what problem do you want to solve and what do you need to take on? But the other side is making sure you understand the buyer's point of view, right? So, for example, within the banking space, basically I would argue that the regulators have taken the perspective of they have a hard time regulating fintechs, but they have a direct responsibility for regulating banks. So what they do is sort of regulate by extension. So they've put out some pretty helpful guidance saying, here's the third-party risk management expectations we have of you if you're going to engage with a fintech partner. They're not anti-fintech partners, but they've put together a sort of a 25-page program that gives clear expectations around, here's how you do the due diligence, here's the things that you should ask about, here's the decisions you need to make, and here's you should monitor it on an ongoing basis. So the point to a founder is understand that there's that regulatory oversight that comes with that customer that you have, where it's just increasingly harder and harder to get somebody to sort of look the other way on certain maybe shortcomings. So, and again, and then you get into the nuances of some institutions are more or less risk averse and sort of take the graded, we'll read everything in the most conservative way versus others that are willing to be a little bit more open-minded about it and sort of go with the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law. But there is a certain, one of the things that's been really eye-opening is, as working in the investment management industry, the SEC is always there. And if you're running an RIA, that you're going to get, reviewed periodically. I mean, banks know who their regulators are. They see them and they talk to them on a regular basis. They are getting reviewed on an annual, at minimum annually. And so there is that, it's not a sort of, it's a very personal sort of oversight that comes from that. And so that creates the expectation on the regulator's part, but also the bank's part, that says we need to sort of run this by a new product or a new service. Some of them, they need to run this by their regulator.
Yep. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's so important on any side of the equation. Wow.
Right.
That's great, Steve. Steve, I want to say thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
My last question to you. There'll be institutions, there'll be students, there'll be startups, watching this podcast. What's the best way for them to connect with you and learn more from you? Because your knowledge and experience is so deep and rich and interesting. How can they get connected with you? What do you recommend? And I can put it in the description, whatever links you want me to throw in there too for our audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably the easiest way is on LinkedIn. I'm a X, I guess now, watcher, not a much of a poster on X, but so LinkedIn would be the most effective way to reach out to me. We also have, if you're interested in learning more about Jade, we have the jadeplatform.com, where you can learn more and reach out to us. And we're working on developing a waitlist. And then for the investment advisory work, I have another website called the dorvaladvisorygroup.com. But awesome. I love chatting with people, helping folks to, as hopefully it comes across, I get excited about the opportunities. We haven't even touched on some of the, so there are so many. I guess my closing statement would be is that if you're a founder out there who wants to be in this space, there's still a lot of problems that would be surprised that haven't been solved, right? So I'm working with a new startup that's saying, why is it that we're sitting here in early January and I don't know whether or not I'm going to pay taxes or get a tax refund? And why is 70% of the country gets a tax refund, and yet how many people say that if they miss a paycheck, they wouldn't be able to pay their bills? And why are we giving a tax-free loan to the government for that? So why? And you look around, why isn't nobody solved this problem? So there's a lot of problems still out there to be solved that might seem obvious, but if you're interested in it and you want to dig in, go after it.
Yeah, it's a whole psychological thing on that too. Even a lot of tech to help that out to make it easier, but the psychological part is what really is the enabler and blocker on everything you just said right there. That's awesome. Exactly. So Steve, I mean, we'll definitely bump into each other. We're always going as the same kind of places, the same trying to do the same help the ecosystem grow. In 2026, I'm excited for it. You and I are gonna have a lot of fun. I know we are.
Absolutely, yeah. And thank you, Rob, for everything, for this opportunity. Thank you for all the time you put into the ecosystem, the work you do at the Mass Fintech Hub, the work with students in the industry. I think getting more students to recognize the opportunities and the interesting opportunities that exist in financial services is a huge, valuable thing for both them and for us as an industry.
Awesome. Steve, thank you so much. I just want to say bye, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to What the Heck, Fintech. Make sure you tune into our next episode as we continue to interview fintech leaders and share real-world stories from across the fintech ecosystem, so you can fully understand that fintech is fin life.